Today in class, we learned about triangle congruence. And so I kind of want to give you a big picture of what we're going to be doing for the rest of the unit, and then we'll get into the specifics for today. So for the rest of the unit, we are going to focus on basically 5 theorems for triangle congruence. So this sheet that you have here has all 5 of them. We've got side, 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 angle, side. These are the 2 we're going to focus on today. And then we're going to use this same sheet for your notes the next time we meet. We're going to do angle, side, angle, and we're also going to look at angle, angle, side, and then hypotenuse, leg. So this notes page is very important because we're going to put notes for the 2 days all on this so that we've got them all in one spot. The other thing that I'm going to give you that you should have as well is this sheet, which is just a reference guide. It again has all 5 of the theorems and then some hints for solving proofs, and then the CPC-TC, which is what we're also going to be using in our proofs. So this is another reference guide. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to go back into your binder, go to your notes from Unit 2, and I want you to pull up the segment proofs reference sheet as well as the angle proofs reference sheet. And I want you to put those in this unit's notes so that when you're doing your proofs, you're going to have the angle proofs references and the segment proof references, as well as the new information that we're learning, which will be the triangle congruence theorems on these 2 sheets. All 4 of these sheets are going to be very important for you when you're working the proofs. And if we get all of these filled out really well and you have them all right by you when you're doing the proofs, they're going to be so much easier, and then they're also going to act as your study tool. Okay, so I would like for you to pause the video, get in your binder, and pull out these 2 sheets so that you have those from Unit 2, and then we're going to start working on filling out these new triangle congruent sheets. All right, so now you should be organized, have all the sheets you need. What we're going to do now is we are going to start just in general talking about triangle congruence. That basically means that if all corresponding angles and sides of 2 triangles are congruent, then the triangles are congruent. However, we can prove triangles are congruent using fewer parts, or what I like to call shortcuts. So rather than having to prove that every side is congruent and every angle is congruent, we can use these shortcuts, which are really theorems, to prove that triangles are congruent using less information. Okay, so our first shortcut or theorem is going to be side, side, side. And side, side, side just says if 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to 3 sides of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So here I'm looking at my 2 triangles, and if I would say that AB is congruent to DE, that's the first side. Then I can also see, because I have my markings here, that BC is congruent to EF. And then I also see that AC is congruent to DF. If I have all these sides proven congruent, then I can say that both of these triangles are congruent. So the triangle congruency then would be that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And as we learned about in the last block, we have to make sure that all these things match up, that I have the order correct. Here I see AB is congruent to DE, that matches here on my triangle. BC is congruent to EF, that matches. And then I have my outside parts. I see AC is congruent to DF. In class we're using these angle legs, and we're going to use these for some blocks coming up too, so I wanted to get them out and just introduce them to you. So here if I look at this triangle, I'm going to be concentrating on the sides of the triangle. So I have one with a yellow side that's a certain distance, one that's purple that is a certain distance, and one that is red that's also a certain distance. If I were to prove another triangle was congruent using these angle legs, what I would do is take another triangle and just give them the exact same legs, right? They all have the same size. So I would ask, are all of the angles the same if all these sides are congruent? My answer would be yes. All of the angles are congruent. So I can say by the sides being congruent that all of the angles are congruent as well. And if we took our protractors out and we measured this, we would see that all the angles are congruent. Now if I go in and I change just one of these sides on this one that I'm trying to make congruent, let's say I put a green one in here, well, do I have then a different triangle? Yeah, of course I do, right? So by changing one side, now I have a totally different triangle. I could try and lay it on there and see if they're congruent, but they're not congruent. So that just shows us that we do need to have all three sides congruent to have a congruent triangle. The next theorem is side-angle side, and we abbreviate that as SAS. This one says if two sides and the included angle, you have to be careful with this, is the angle that's in between the two sides you're talking about. If the two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. So we would write this out and we would say if AB is congruent to DE, and then our angle would be angle B is congruent to angle E, and then our third side, our second side, would be BC is congruent to EF. If I just have that information, those three pieces of information, my shortcut tells me that then I can say that these two triangles are congruent. So I would write triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And again, I need to have everything lined up here. I see angle B and E are congruent, and they're both in the same position on my triangle, so we have to make sure we write the letters in the correct order there. And remember, included means the angle between the sides. So we're going to look at the angle legs and figure out, does this really work? Can I just say a side, an angle, and a side is all I need to prove two triangles congruent? Well, I need to know what this angle measure is here, so I'm going to set this at 40 degrees. So now I have a side that it's a red side, right? So I don't know exactly how many inches it is, but the red side we know is going to be a certain distance. The yellow side is another distance. Our angle in the middle is 40 degrees. If I have another triangle and I set this one up so that I have a 40-degree angle, then I want to test this, and I want to see, am I going to have the exact same triangle? So I have the other one at 40 degrees as well now. So that would mean that if I make a triangle out of this, I'm going to take a stick and I'm going to attach it. So now here's my triangle. I still have my 40-degree angle, and I've got this side and this side here, which we already started with, and now I'm adding that third side. And then over here on this one, I'm going to do the same thing, and so I add my green stick, and I know that these two triangles are congruent, right? I already know all of their sides are congruent, but if I measure both of these, I should find that the measure is 40 degrees for my angle here, just as it is here. And if we think through it, if I change this angle here at all, I'm going to need either a smaller side here to connect my triangle, or if I make it larger, I'm going to need a larger side. So that angle is essentially what is controlling the length of this side here. So all I need are two sides and an angle to prove two triangles congruent. the last thing we want to do is pull out this reference guide here and mark these. So side, side, side would mean I have each side being congruent. So put 1 congruent marking there, 2 there, and 3 there. And then side angle side would say that if I had this side and that side congruent, this angle and that angle congruent, and these two sides congruent, I would have side angle side. Alright, so that wraps up this video for notes. I'm going to create another video that will have proofs, practicing proofs, and also some other practice that we did in class.